Hi and welcome to a new episode on my RC Scrappy build. I'm Mark on RC Nerd 74. What you can see here is a regular wing, a stock wing from the Horizon Hobby Carbon Cup, 2 meter wingspan Carbon Cup. What does it take to change this stock wing from the Carbon Cup to the awesome wing of Scrappy? The first thing you need is double slotted flaps. In today's video I'm gonna talk about the first steps I did to modify the flaps. Then you need wing slats, the amazing transforming wing which is installed on full-scale Scrappy. Then I will do the extension on ailerons and flaps. Then I will install the gap seal between aileron and flaps, the support brackets below the wing to carry stuff like bikes and other things. Then I will do cutted wing tips. I will remove the winglet on the stock wing, and I will also install the whole lights exactly like it's made on full-scale Scrappy. Beside the first steps on the wing build, I will show you all the details of the reshape of the wing-shaped upper wishbones. I will show you the details of making the new carbon spinner for the 4-blade prop, and also a little modification on the rudder fin to make the rudder fin look more scaled than the first try I did. First, let's have a look at the first steps on the double slotted flaps. The target was to solve this function with a single servo, so I had to install dual flap rods. This installation was just for testing. For this I also cut the cardboard flap, taped it onto the first step of the flap on the regular flap, and like this I had the possibility to check what position of the rudder horns is needed, how long the rods should be, all that stuff to make the two flap parts move in perfect harmony. So the build of the final flap solution will follow in the next video. Then I wanted to reshape the upper wishbones. The reason for this is that the first try I did with the shape is without wing shape. So full-scale Scrappy has a wing shape on the upper wishbones, and I simply had no solution to make this wing shape on the first try. And on the rear end of the wishbones I had not enough space because of the wing slats which are mounted at this point on the fuselage. I didn't make the wishbones completely new, but modified them to make them look way more scale and get them the nice wing shape like full-scale Scrappy. First I made a paper template to check the design ideas. That was just a raw shape to see how it can work, so I had to give the wing slats some space, and I decided to make a shape which goes around the mount spot of the wing slats to avoid contact between the moving wishbone and the wing slats. Another issue on the first design was that on the bottom side of the upper wishbones there were visible nuts, so that didn't look good at all, and I decided to flip the screws and the nuts, have the nuts on the top side inside of the shock mount, and on the bottom side I drilled countersunk holes to install countersunk screws to make the bottom side of the wishbone perfectly clean. For easier handling I wanted to glue the screw nuts into the shock mount. For this I sanded them for better gluing and glued the nuts onto the shock mounts. Like this I have easy handling if I remove or install the shock mounts on the wishbone. Then I sanded the whole surface of the wishbones just to make them ready for the modifications. To change the shape of the wishbone I made an extension out of 1mm carbon fiber. To make this fit clean I sanded a step into the wishbone, cut the 1mm carbon fiber part, sanded the edges of the carbon extension clean and straight, and sanded the surface of the extension for better glue grip. Then glued the extension plates onto the wishbone, sanded all to a flat surface, sanded off all the epoxy excess, and then cut it and sanded the carbon fiber extension to the right shape. After this, the design was ready to shape the area where the wing slat gets closed. So I made a round shape that looks way nicer than you have just a corner in the shape. So I sanded it with my Dremel to make them really look nice and clean. That's not full scale look, but it looks way better in my opinion than the shorter wishbone. To make the wing shape on the wishbone, I used some XPS foam, cut it to shape, glued it on the extension with some CA glue, and sanded the extension foam to the exact same level. Like this, I was able to put on the big foam part onto the whole wishbone. Then this time I used UHU Por just because you can save some time. UHU Por is pretty quick. If you put it on the part, remove it, let it cure for 10 minutes, put it back on, and like this you have a really quick working glue and you can immediately start to work on the shape of the foam. Then I cut the foam to the raw shape and sanded the whole wing shape into the foam, all the details to try to make the wishbone look as close as possible to full-scale Scrappy look. Because I only put on one single layer of carbon fiber, there is a risk to get some foam visible through the carbon fiber. So I decided to put on some Por spray paint from Multiplex to make the foam all black, to be sure that there will be no foam visible through the carbon fiber. Then I did a try with UHU Por to fix the dry carbon fiber on the wishbone, but that was a big mistake. It works perfectly as long as you do not put your epoxy onto the carbon fiber. As soon as the carbon fiber soaks up the epoxy, all the UHU Por comes loose and you have a really hard time to keep all the carbon fiber on the round edges and all that stuff in place. So I highly recommend to always use epoxy, let it cure until it gets sticky, and then put on your carbon fiber, and then you won't have any issue at all when you add the epoxy layers to soak up the carbon fiber. After the first epoxy layer was done and the carbon fiber was soaked up, I sanded off all the carbon fiber excess, did some detail shaping with sandpaper and files to get a nice first shape before adding 3 more layers of epoxy to get a perfectly smooth surface. For this epoxy work I used another 24-hour epoxy, laminating epoxy, which is from Sycomin. The supplier recommended this one just because you get a cleaner surface, no more issues with not clear surfaces, and the result so far is pretty good. I'm really happy to change the epoxy and I hope to make the parts with visible carbon fiber, which will look amazing when the finish is really good. After all the epoxy layers were added, I wet sanded the whole surface with 400 grit. Then I had to open the holes for the shock mounts again because the top side of the wishbones was closed. So I drilled holes from the lower side through the screw holes so I can install the shock mount and draw the position of the shock mount, and then I knew where I had to cut the hole to make the shock mounts fit again. For detail shaping I used again my diamond coated file, which worked perfect on carbon fiber, and like this I got a nice shape of the hole for the shock mounts. At this occasion I also sanded off the shiny surface on the double wishbone mounts to matte finish because I want to have all the carbon fiber parts in matte finish. We will see if this will be the final look, but currently I prefer the matte finish instead of the shiny finish. With this modification on the wishbones, I really like the look way more. It looks way cleaner, and also the clean bottom side of the Wishbones looks awesome in comparison to the nasty nuts which were looking out of the Wishbones before this modification. Meanwhile, I also got my new carbon fiber spinner for the Draco 4-blade prop. This spinner comes without any openings for the blades, so I had to cut the openings for these 4 blades to fit the Draco prop on this spinner. And the solution I did this time looked way cleaner than the first try I did on the 3-blade prop, so I'm really happy with the look of the holes for the prop blades. I also wet sanded it with 400 grit to get a nice matte finish, and had to modify the center hole, which takes the screw to fix the spinner on the back plate. This hole was too big for my M4 screw, so I closed the hole with 24-hour epoxy and drilled an exact 4mm hole for a perfect playless centered screw position on the spinner. I also reworked the radius of the carbon fiber rudder fin. The first shape I did didn't really match the radius of the full-scale Scrappy fin, so I made a carbon fiber radius of 1.5mm carbon fiber plate to make this radius look way more scale than on the first try. First I took a picture from full-scale Scrappy's fin, printed it out, cut it out to get the exact shape of the radius, and copied it on a cardboard template. This cardboard template I used on the carbon fiber to get the exact shape, sanded the carbon fiber to shape, then marked the position on the rudder fin, and had to cut the slot into the rudder and the fin to glue in the carbon fiber part, which gives the fin the right radius. I glued this in with epoxy, and later I will put on some foamed epoxy to make the shape look the same like the whole fin and make it a perfectly smooth connection between the fin and the rudder. This is it for today's video. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you like it. I'm really excited about the next steps, building the wings. See you in the next one. Have a good time. Happy flying. Bye bye.